Let's take a turn to, this is, I think, an interesting story, and there's a story beneath the story here. So you may have seen this week, CBC reported on this story about new military dress standards, that hair coloring, face tattoos will be permitted under new military dress rules. Now, I would say there's nothing more professional than a member of the armed forces with a giant face tattoo. Like, just think of Mike Tyson at CFB Borden doing push-ups. Like, that is the quintessential Canadian experience right there. But what I find interesting is that CBC readers learned about this on July 5th, 2022. Harrison, spike the football here. When did True North readers learn about this?
April 14th. So CBC is only just a little late, Andrew. They're only just a few months late to this story about the military. True North broke the story months ago, and to everyone's surprise, Andrew, the CBC failed to mention True North, failed to credit True North for breaking the story months earlier. It might be because they're just embarrassed about their lack of serious journalism. They must be embarrassed about the fact that they just can't seem to stay on top of the news.
Yeah, and this is not exclusively a problem that affects True North. The CBC is kind of notorious for this, and they have so much funding, they have so many staff, they have so many resources, they have a level of funding that most commercial newsrooms in this country would kill for, yet they still rely so heavily on the work done by other newsrooms, done by reporters for Post Media, for the Toronto Star, and increasingly for a lot of independent and local outlets too.
Well, what good is a public broadcaster, a broadcaster that the only job of that broadcaster is to give Canadians the news? What good is it if a small group like we are at True North are beating CBC months early to a story that is news at the time, and only that the CBC only reports as news once the government itself pushes out the press release? I mean, it's journalism by press release for the CBC. It's been that way for years now, and they're really not doing anything to give Canadians value. All you really have to do at this point is abandon the CBC and just basically look at watch True North, watch other alternative media sites, because not only is the CBC not getting their news from us, because if they were, they'd be quicker. It wouldn't take them months to write our story. They're waiting on the government to release the news. So if the CBC isn't going to release the news, if they're not going to do it before the government press release writes it for them, then what good is there? And we've seen the CBC do this constantly. True North wrote a story in February about the NDP, an NDP candidate using homophobic slurs and promoting Antifa, and the CBC took our story, posted it a few days later. Then True North wrote a story also about an NDP MP and a Liberal MP's questioning their Indigenous claims. So an NDP MP calls out a Liberal MP for not being Indigenous enough, sort of a Canadian Elizabeth Warren story there. We wrote that on April, and then CBC takes it 3 or 4 days later and writes the same story, of course, failing to credit us. So we've seen it happen before. We see it happen many times. Again, it's not going to change at this point. How long do we expect, or how much rope do we want to give the CBC to fix their act, to get their act together? It's not going to happen. So at what point, Andrew, do we just give up and say, look, these journalists just don't know how to do their job properly? All they have to do is just read True North.